Okay, everybody, welcome back. I'm going to start by saying good afternoon, because we've just ticked past the day. It is good afternoon. My name is A.Sleightholm. I'm WPD's Resources and External Affairs Director, and it's my pleasure to lead the next session, which is one of two sessions that we'll have before we break for some lunch. I'm really excited to be doing this session because it's something that we've not tried before, and it's something a little bit different. And we've spent much of the previous sessions talking about what WPD do. My session's called Building a Social Contract, but that's very much about how WPD do things. And what I'll do during the course of the session, I'll talk a little bit about what a social contract might look like, what it might contain. I'll talk a little bit about how we could present a social contract in a way that's meaningful to people in this room. And I'll talk a little bit about what are the ways that you as stakeholders might want to hold WPD to account for that social contract. I'm going to start with a slide just to set a little bit of context, and I'm going to go back to where we started this morning. Alex's introduction about what WPD do, and the fact that we are a vital, essential public service. And I haven't heard anybody in this room that would disagree with the fact that electricity is a vital public service. We know that as a company, we are responsible for delivering electricity to 8 million customers, 20 million properties over a quarter of the UK. We're a really big company. And that's why days like today and the stakeholder events that we do, where we can gain people's views and perspectives, are really, really important. But that's not everything. It isn't just about what we do, it's about how we do things, and it's about, as a big company with a huge footprint across part of the UK, how do you trust us? How do you trust WPD to do more than just deliver customer service and network performance and all of those specific deliverables? It's about trust. It's about recognising that as a company of the size that we are responsible for an impact on the communities that we serve, for the society that we mix with, for the environment, and we have a responsibility in all of those areas. And my session is about how do we build trust and how do we develop those aspects of the business plan that aren't necessarily the easiest to write down. Now, before I go into what is in a social contract and how we might measure it, I'd like you just to pick up your tablets because we're going to do a voting exercise. Now, because this voting exercise is a drag and drop one, I'm going to talk you through it before I actually start the clock. What you should see on the tablets in front of you are 9 different companies that you will recognise. So your local authority, your energy supplier, so that's the company you pay your energy bills to, Western Power Distribution, the company that we're here to talk about today, John Lewis, that well-known department store, the NHS, and I doubt there's anybody in this room that hasn't had some interaction with the NHS at some point in time, Ryanair, the rail companies, Amazon, a huge, great company that makes shopping really, really efficient, or a huge, big company that you don't trust because they have all your data, one or the other, on your water company. Now I'm going to start the timer, and when I start the timer, can you drag and drop those companies into the order of which the companies that you trust the most at the top and the least at the bottom. And there's 30 seconds counting down from now, and you will need to hit submit at the end, and I'll give you 2-3 seconds warning just before we do that. So drag and drop into the order that you trust the most to the order that you trust the least. And there's 5 seconds left, so you do need to hit that submit button to make sure that your score comes up on the screen. There we go. Well, I can breathe because I've looked at the Western Power Distribution one and I can see the 75%. But I'm also interested. NHS, that was exactly the same as when we did it in Wales yesterday. NHS came out at 81%, Ryanair 19%. I think that was pretty similar to yesterday as well. So just a really interesting exercise in who do you trust? And you will all have had different reasons for voting that way. One more vote before I do some more slides and some more presentation. Easier one this time. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust WPD? 10 seconds and counting down. 1 not at all, 10 extremely high. There we go. So we've got a really nice mix of scores. We've got quite a few at the high end. We haven't got any 1s, 2s or 3s. I'd be really interested in the 4s or 5s. I don't want anybody to stand up now. If you would tap me on the shoulder at lunchtime and tell me why it was 4 or 5, I'd be really interested to know. So that's a little exercise in trust, and my session is really trying to get under the skin of understanding what it is that makes us trust the company. And for WPD, it starts with our core principles. We are absolutely about customers and ensuring that customers get a good network performance and a good customer service. And you have an absolute right to expect that, and that we believe is the basis of trust. But trust in a company goes wider than that. We have a business plan, and we've talked about how we'll go through the various stages of the business plan. And if you look in our current business plan, you will see elements that don't necessarily fit that Ofgem criteria, that specific, this is what we will do when and how it will be measured. There are commitments in there that go wider and are voluntary, that reach out more into what we do in the society, the community, and the environmental area. And those are the things that we think form part of the social contract. So what is a social contract? Well, it is about our purpose. It is about legitimacy. Are we the best people to run that network, deliver that customer service? It is about trust. It goes into voluntary commitments that companies will make that go above and beyond the things that a regulator will write in a contract and the boxes that you can tick to say that you're doing all the right things in all the right order. And we've really heard that message, and I think it's a message that really is out there far wider in terms of it is an important part of what a company does. And customers tell us it isn't just about that absolute right to great network performance and customer service. It might be about payments to shareholders. It might be about the tax that a company pays. It might be about just that wider contribution to society and the environment and being embedded in the community you serve. So this is our attempt at what we think might form part of a social contract and the key elements in it. Number one, it has to be about good service. You trust a company because they deliver what they say they're going to do for a fair price. And we had some interesting debate on my table this morning about how do you know the price is fair. It is about getting the basics right. It is about making sure whatever the wind, whatever the weather, WPD are out there doing what WPD is supposed to do, providing great customer service, recognising that great customer service can change. That great customer service for some people is the ability to talk to a human being on the end of the telephone when they've got a problem. That for other people it might be about being able to do a transaction online and having that transaction being seamless and straightforward and simple, but no human interaction. It's also about the corporate behaviour. It's also about having confidence that what is discussed in the WPD boardroom is what matters to customers, and having transparency about the decisions that that boardroom makes, and about having independent scrutiny of what that boardroom does and what that boardroom delivers. It's about sustainability. We talk about business plans for Ofgem that span a 5-year period. It feels like an awful long time, but we are building a business that needs to be sustainable for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And how do we look at those long-term aspects and make sure the business we build is sustainable? How do we think about our impact on the environment, whether that's our own environmental footprint or the things that we do to support the government ambition for the low carbon agenda? How do we feed into that? And then last but by no means least, I've talked about us being a large business that covers a large part of the UK. How do we ensure that any plan we build is right for the communities that we serve and recognises those differences, whether it's a rural or an urban community, whether it's a community that's got a really, really big energy ambition? How do we play into that? One way, and this is just one way, and I'll come on to some more ways in a minute of how we can do that, is how do we determine that business plan is fair, is as part of the planning that we're doing for the next price control review, which is what we call RIIO ED2, we are setting up, and we have people here today who are part of that group, a customer engagement group. Ofgem's required all the companies to do it, but a customer engagement group is a group of expert individuals who are capable of representing all different customer types, and are not there to be WPD's friend, they are there to challenge us. So when we take all of the engagement and things that we learn from sessions such as this, and we put it all into a plan, that group is the group that will actually get the pointy stick out and say, look, I think you could do better there. I don't think that's a fair representation of views. I don't think you've tested things over here. And that group has quite a lot of power, because that group will ultimately report into Ofgem, will develop reports on our business plan about whether it is acceptable to them or not acceptable to them. And ultimately, if we in that group cannot agree, or we in that group and Ofgem cannot agree, there is the scope to have independent hearings. So if WPD put together an investment plan for Bristol, that group does not feel fairly represents the views of all of the stakeholders in Bristol, there's the opportunity to have a public hearing. That group as well has a huge remit. I'm not going to cover all the things they do. I'm actually going to say they will cover every single aspect of the business plan except the one that's on the far right-hand side, and that's the financeability. That means they become intimately acquainted with our business plan, and one of the questions when we come back to the table is that expert group the right way or the right forum to challenge WPD on social contract and the social aspects of our business plan? We've talked a little bit about what a social contract is. Here are some ideas about what a social contract could contain. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I am going to highlight a few key themes in here. So, for example, the social contract could be the things that WPD do to ensure excellent environmental performance. And that might be the environmental footprint of our own business, or the wider things that we do to facilitate the low carbon agenda, and all of those huge changes and things that we talked about earlier. It might not be environmental aspects, it might be societal aspects. It could be the things that WPD do to support vulnerable customers. The things that we do, firstly for vulnerable customers when we cause a problem, when the power goes out, or more widely, the things that we do customers where we're not necessarily the cause, but we are in a position to provide support, and that's the fuel poverty agenda. And how important is it to you as stakeholders that we get involved in things like that? Hugely important, and a topic that over the last 2 days has been really coming up the agenda, is the local community investment and producing plans as a business that reflect the communities that we serve and the things that we do embedded within our local communities. And some other examples of things that are on that slide would be, I guess, under the heading of governance. We've talked about what happens in the WPD boardroom, but there's also transparency on where the money goes and the amount that's paid in dividends and the amount of tax that we pay, and how important is that. And even more importantly is, if you think those things are important and form part of a business plan or social contract outside of a business plan, what are the consequences for failure? How would you hold us to account? So, I talked about a social contract and what might be in it. This is all about how you present it, and we think there are 3 options. Option number 1 would be the business plan that we're laying out today on that blank piece of paper and starting to build for the next 4 years to submit to Ofgem. It should be part of your plan. It's part of your culture, WPD. It should be a golden thread that runs through a business plan. I shouldn't have to worry about your social conscience. I shouldn't have to worry about the social contract separately to the business plan. That's option A. Option B is to take one of the things that we talked about in one of the earlier sessions, which is to develop the business plan and fit all the what's, things that we will deliver against Ofgem structure, but to add in this red one at the bottom, these wider commitments as voluntary obligations, as voluntary commitments, and therefore to include it within the business plan, but as a separate part of the business plan that you can actually refer to. And then finally, you could write a separate social contract. You could actually have a document that says, the business plan says all of the things that we will deliver, The social contract is about our purpose, and it is about how we will deliver it. It's about our ethos, it's about our ethics. And then finally, to avoid social contract becoming a wonderful sounding thing that can be presented beautifully, but not necessarily holding a company's feet to the fire to check that it's actually being delivered, is what are the ways that you could check that WPD is meeting its social commitments. So we've talked within the presentation about using the customer engagement group. There are other ways you could go about it. You could look for external accreditations in areas of the business that are important to stakeholders. And the example on the screen is the Fair Tax Mark. If it's an area of interest, should we get a Fair Tax Mark? Somebody suggested you could, to demonstrate that you are a responsible employer, get a living wage accreditation. There are lots of accreditations out there that you can get in areas to demonstrate that you're meeting certain standards. I'm sure you could get aspects of the social contract externally audited, externally verified. That's another option. WPD could simply report back against its social contract. Our social contract contains a range of commitments and we report back against those commitments. It might be possible to do some benchmarking. How did WPD perform against its peers? How did WPD perform against other companies outside of our sector? Customer research. Actually go out and do some research of customers, market research, and see what they value and see what their opinions are. And then last but by no means least, actually doing stakeholder feedback and surveys at a more granular level and a more detailed